A routine hospital visit became a nightmare in seconds. The doctor looked at him and said, "I'm not going to touch him. He's ugly." Just like that, the room shifted. The buzz of machines, the sterile smell, the quiet chatter, all of it seemed to fade, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. Eyes avoided him. Whispers echoed from corners he couldn't see. Nurses hesitated, unsure, uncomfortable, while his pain grew sharper with every passing second. In that moment, he realized he was completely alone in a place meant to save him. A place where prejudice outweighed duty, where cruelty was disguised as authority, and where his humanity was dismissed with a single sentence. But would he shrink into the shadows, swallowed by injustice, or would the anger and humiliation he felt ignite something that no one, not even the doctor, could ignore? He was a man respected not just in the community, but by the very hospital he was about to enter. In his early 40s, he had spent years contributing generously to local causes, and his donations had helped fund new wings, state-of-the-art equipment, and scholarships for medical students. His name was familiar to hospital staff, mentioned with gratitude in newsletters, engraved on plaques, and acknowledged in quiet conversations between nurses and administrators. Outside the hospital, he was active and compassionate, investing in programs for youth, mentoring local leaders, and quietly supporting initiatives that improved lives. To everyone who knew him, he was dignified, thoughtful, and fair, a man who believed in giving back, in making the world a little better, one act at a time. That morning, he walked into the modern California hospital expecting the routine care anyone would trust this institution to provide. Dressed simply but with the quiet confidence of a man accustomed to respect, he carried no suspicion that this visit would turn ordinary expectations upside down. The lobby hummed with activity, the soft beeping of monitors, the distant clatter of carts, the low murmur of conversations. He passed the reception desk, exchanged polite nods, and felt the subtle familiarity of a place that had benefited from his generosity. Yet even in this environment of recognition and gratitude, a shadow lingered, an unspoken reminder that respect in name didn't always translate to respect in practice. Hospitals, like the world outside, were not immune to bias, and as he walked toward the consultation room, he had no idea that the very place that should have honored his humanity was about to challenge it in the cruelest way. In that moment, he was no longer just a donor or a respected figure in the community. He was a man at the mercy of someone else's prejudice. A man whose dignity could be dismissed with a single glance or a sentence. The stage was set, and the scene that would unfold next would shake the foundation of everything he believed about fairness, compassion, and the promises of institutions he had long supported. As he approached the consultation room, a quiet unease settled over him, though he couldn't yet name it. The hallways were sleek, modern, and orderly, yet something in the air felt heavier than usual, as if the antiseptic smell masked a tension that the staff didn't bother to hide. He noticed the nurse glancing at him, hesitating as if unsure whether to greet him warmly or turn away. Normally, he was met with polite recognition, subtle nods acknowledging his contributions to the hospital. Today, there was only avoidance. When the doctor finally appeared, everything changed. The man who had built his reputation on intelligence and compassion now looked at him with a cold, calculating glance. "I'm not going to touch him. He's ugly." The words landed like a slap in the face, reverberating through the pristine room. His heart sank, disbelief warring with outrage. This wasn't just disrespect, it was a deliberate declaration that his suffering was insignificant, that his life mattered less than the whim of someone in power. He tried to stay composed, gripping the edge of the examination table as a wave of anger and humiliation rose. The nurse shifted awkwardly behind the doctor, glancing at him with guilt, but said nothing. He had donated hundreds of thousands to this hospital. He had funded scholarships and research. Yet here, in the very place he had helped sustain, his humanity was being stripped away. Time seemed to stretch. Every second was a silent accusation. "You don't belong here." He could feel it in the averted eyes, in the tense posture of the staff, in the slight flinch of the receptionist as they heard the doctor's words echo down the corridor. His chest tightened, a mixture of fear and indignation pressing against him. The equipment's steady beeping now felt like a countdown to some unseen judgment. As he sat there, frozen in shock, he realized he wasn't just confronting one man's prejudice. He was confronting an entire system that allowed it to persist behind clean floors and sterile walls. The injustice was tangible, almost suffocating. But with that realization came a spark, an undeniable, simmering determination. He could not let this go unnoticed. He could not allow his pain, his indignity, to be erased by arrogance and bias. Then came the whispers. From the hallway, a soft, cautious murmur, growing as more staff noticed the confrontation. Some looked away, some peered curiously, others whispered among themselves. The tension in the room became electric. It was no longer just his battle. It was becoming visible to everyone, a test of courage, dignity, and accountability. He clenched his fists under the table, his mind racing. How would he respond? Could he turn the tables on this injustice without losing himself in anger or despair? Every instinct screamed at him, stand up, confront it, make them see. And yet, fear tugged at the edges of his consciousness, whispering that challenging the authority of a doctor could backfire in ways he couldn't predict. The room held its breath. Outside, the hospital continued its daily rhythm, oblivious to the storm building in a single consultation room. But inside, the calm was shattered, and the stage was set for a confrontation that would expose not just prejudice, but the courage of a man refusing to be invisible. The doctor's words lingered like smoke in the room. "I'm not going to touch him. He's ugly." Every syllable burned into his mind, igniting a mix of fury, disbelief, and humiliation that he could no longer suppress. The man who had walked in expecting care, respect, and dignity now faced a cruel, naked truth, his humanity denied by someone sworn to protect it. The walls of the modern hospital seemed to close in, bright lights harsh above him, the sterile scent sharp in his nostrils, echoing the injustice he could neither escape nor ignore. The nurse shifted nervously, glancing between them, while a few staff at the edge of the hallway peered through half-open doors. Whispers bounced across the corridor, some cautious, some incredulous, as though the air itself held its breath. For a moment he felt small, invisible, reduced to a single label: unwanted, unacceptable, ugly. Anger surged through him, hot and unrelenting, coiling tight in his chest like a storm ready to erupt. He realized this wasn't just about the doctor or even the hospital. This was about every moment in life when someone's worth was judged by skin, appearance, or prejudice. Every donation, every hour he'd volunteered, every effort to help his community meant nothing in this room. And yet, amidst the humiliation, something fierce awakened. He would not be ignored. He would not allow this cruelty to stand unchallenged. His voice rose, calm but resolute, slicing through the tension like a blade. Eyes widened. Staff froze. The doctor's smug expression faltered just slightly, the first crack in the armor of arrogance. He spoke not just to the doctor, but to every silent witness, to every person who had ever been told they didn't matter. His pain, his dignity, and his voice demanded recognition. Time seemed to stretch as the room held him in its grip, the weight of history, prejudice, and courage colliding in a single instant. Every heartbeat thumped like a drum of defiance. He knew this confrontation would change something, about the doctor, about the hospital, and perhaps about the way they treated every patient thereafter. And as he stood there, refusing to shrink, refusing to be invisible, the question hung in the air, electrifying, unanswerable for now. How far would they go to deny him? And how far would he go to ensure the world finally saw the truth? The aftermath was swift and undeniable. Word of the doctor's cruel words spread throughout the hospital, carried by witnesses and whispers that refused to be silenced. Administrators, confronted with evidence of blatant prejudice, could no longer turn a blind eye. Internal investigations revealed not just a single act of cruelty, but a pattern of dismissive behavior toward patients of color. The doctor, once untouchable behind his white coat and authority, was suspended and ultimately lost his position. He was required to undergo intensive training on medical ethics, patient rights, and the oath he had long promised to uphold but had so callously ignored. Meanwhile, the man who had been dismissed, humiliated, and left alone in that sterile room reclaimed his dignity. Though the scars of that moment lingered, he emerged stronger, not because the injustice was erased, but because he refused to let it define him. His courage, his refusal to be invisible, became a quiet beacon to the hospital staff and the community. He reminded everyone that contributions, respect, and humanity cannot be negotiated. They are owed to every individual, regardless of appearance, race, or background. The incident sparked broader conversations throughout the hospital and the community. Policies were reviewed, bias training became mandatory, and discussions about systemic racism and accountability were no longer optional. They were urgent. What had begun as a personal affront became a catalyst for institutional reflection, forcing everyone involved to confront uncomfortable truths about prejudice, privilege, and responsibility. But perhaps the most powerful impact was the lesson the doctor, and others like him, could not ignore: that privilege does not shield anyone from accountability, and that cruelty once exposed carries consequences. And for those watching, the story leaves a question that cannot be brushed aside. How many lives are silently diminished by prejudice every day? And what will it take before society decides that dignity is not negotiable, that justice is not optional, and that every human being deserves to be seen, respected, and cared for?